I never thought I'd be the guy writing this kind of post, but here I am. My name's Mark and I'm 35. I've been married to Lauren for about 5 years now. We met in college, and for the most part I thought things were pretty good. She was always kinda bitchy, always throwing little snide remarks my way, but I figured that was just her personality. Honestly, I loved her even with all that attitude. We had our routines, good times, bad times, but mostly I believed we were solid. Things started to feel off about 6 months ago. She became more distant, more irritable, like she was hiding something. She'd cancel plans without much explanation, and she'd come home late, sometimes smelling different, like she'd been somewhere with someone. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I couldn't ignore the gut feeling that she was messing around. Still, I kept my cool, assumed maybe it was just work stress or some random phase. But I knew deep down it was more than that. Then one night, I noticed a few things that didn't add up. Her phone suddenly became a fortress. She'd hide it whenever I walked by, even the slightest movement made her tense. She started deleting messages, and not just from social media but texts too. The thing that really pushed me over the edge, though, was finding her password stored in her laptop. I didn't mean to invade her privacy, but I was just curious. I knew I shouldn't have, but I peeked. And what I found was a mess. Multiple messages from some guy named Ryan. Not just friendly, flirty stuff that was obvious. They were talking about meetups, about secrets, about making it work. One message said, "Can't wait to see you tonight, babe," and another had a picture, just her, but with a strange, secretive look in her eyes. My stomach sank. That wasn't just a flirtation, it was something real. I could feel my mind spinning, trying to process what I was seeing. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I started watching her more closely. The way she avoided eye contact, the small lies she'd tell about where she'd been, her phone constantly in her hand at odd times. It was like she was hiding everything. The more I looked into it, the clearer it became. Lauren was cheating on me. I felt humiliated and furious all at once. How could she do this to me? I had always been loyal, supportive, patient, and she was out there lying to my face, sneaking around behind my back. It was a punch in the gut. But here, where it gets even more complicated, I also discovered she was messing around with my work, specifically my brain-computer interface calibrator. I've been working on this crazy project for over a year, trying to perfect a neural synchronization system to enhance cognitive function. Lauren was involved in the early stages, helping me set things up, but lately, she'd started to play around with the calibration sessions. I thought it was just her being nosy or wanting to understand my work better, but it was more than that. She was actually lying, sneaking into my lab when I wasn't looking, messing with the neural maps, trying to manipulate the synchronization process. To say it hit me like a ton of bricks is an understatement. Not only was she cheating on me in the usual sense, but she was also sabotaging my work, my life's passion, all because she thought she could get away with it. I felt betrayed on every level, personal and professional. It was a lot to take in, and I wasn't sure how I was going to handle it. The worst part, I didn't even know how long she'd been doing this or how deep the rabbit hole went. All I knew was I had to do something. I had to find a way to confront her and get some answers. So I decided I couldn't let this slide anymore. I needed to confront Lauren, but I also knew I had to be smart about it. First, I gathered all the evidence, screenshots of her messages, the files she'd been messing with in my lab, even the times she'd slipped up and told small lies. I wanted to be prepared, to make sure I had everything I needed before I said a word. I didn't want her to deny or spin her way out of it. I wanted facts. That night, I set up a little voice recorder in the living room just in case. My stomach was tight, my mind racing. I felt betrayed, furious, and honestly kind of helpless. How could she, who always acted so bitchy and dismissive, turn out to be so manipulative? I kept replaying our conversations, trying to find the moment she started lying, the cracks in her story. I kept thinking about the late nights she'd spent out, the secret calls, the way her phone suddenly became a fortress. I had to get her to admit it, or at least break her down enough to get her to tell the truth. Finally, I called her into the living room. She was acting normal, too normal, honestly, like she had something to hide but was trying to keep her composure. I looked her straight in the eyes and I laid everything out. I showed her the messages, the files, the times I'd caught her lying about where she'd been. Her face twisted into a sneer and she crossed her arms. "Oh, come on, Mark," she spat. "That's all just stupid jealousy. You're so paranoid it's pathetic. Ryan's just a friend and you're blowing this out of proportion. Honestly, you're imagining things. You're just insecure." I was stunned. That was her go-to line, deny, 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 but I wasn't buying it. I told her exactly what I knew, how she'd been sneaking around, sabotaging my work, and her stories didn't add up. That's when she started to get bitchy, her voice raised, eyes flashing with contempt. "You don't understand anything," she snapped. "You think I'm cheating because I wanted to see if I could do better than you. You're so obsessed with your stupid brain experiments like that's more important than me. Honestly, I was just bored. It's not like I meant anything serious. You think you're some genius, but you're just a nerd with a project. I don't owe you loyalty. I do what I want." Her words cut deep. I felt like I'd been punched again, only this time by someone I'd loved, someone I'd trusted. I couldn't believe she'd say something so cold, so callous. It was like all the love I'd had for her was draining out and being replaced by pure rage. But beneath that anger there was a deep sadness. How did it come to this? How did I end up with someone who lied and cheated on me, not just behind my back but in my own home, messing with my work? I told her she needed to leave. I said I needed time to think, that I was sure what I was going to do yet, but I couldn't keep her around. She cursed at me, called me insecure, and stormed out. That night I sat alone in the quiet, staring at the walls, feeling numb. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Everything I believed about my marriage, my wife, myself was shattered. The next day I started to process what had happened. I realized I was furious but also unbelievably hurt. I kept asking myself, how did I not see it? How did I miss all the signs? And most of all, how could she throw away everything we built over some stupid affair and her own ego? I knew I needed to protect my work, my project, and myself from any more damage she might cause. But I also knew that forgiving her, or even just staying silent, wasn't an option anymore. This was a turning point. I was done pretending I didn't know. The betrayal was too deep, and I had to figure out what I really wanted from here. After she left, I didn't just sit around feeling sorry for myself. No, I started thinking about strategies. Lauren's been so bitchy and manipulative. She's the kind of person who always lies, twists things, and acts like she's the victim even when she's the one screwing everything up. I realized I had to be smarter than her if I wanted to really get justice or at least find some peace. So, I began by reviewing everything I had on her: screenshots, the files she'd been tampering with, the logs from my neural synchronization sessions. I'd been working on this project for months, trying to perfect a neural mapping system that could enhance cognitive abilities. Now I saw how dangerous her interference could be. If she kept messing with the calibration, it could ruin everything I'd built: my reputation, my research career, maybe even my future. That night, I decided I needed to find a way to get some leverage. I had to make her admit the full scope of her betrayal. I also thought about setting a trap, using her own arrogance and bitchiness against her. I remembered she'd always been obsessed with her appearance. She loved to post bitchy comments on social media about how she was done with losers, or how she was better than everyone. I'd seen her talk about how she was just having fun, but I knew she was just covering her guilt. I made sure all my evidence was organized and ready to go, just in case I needed it to force a confession. Then I reached out to Ryan, her little side guy. I found his number in her phone and called him. I played it cool, pretending to be interested in meeting him. Turns out he was just some guy she met at a bar, nothing special, just another notch on her belt. I told him I knew what was going on, that I was watching her, and that if he kept screwing around with her, he was risking way more than he thought. The next morning, I woke up feeling a strange mixture of relief and fury. I knew I had to act fast on the lab front too. Lauren's interference wasn't just emotional, it was threatening my entire research. If I didn't put a stop to her meddling, everything would be ruined. I decided to install a hidden monitoring system in my lab, something she wouldn't notice. I set it up to log her access, record her movements, and even track her neural activity during her visits. This way, I could catch her red-handed if she tried to mess with the calibration again. While working on that, I also drafted a detailed report for my colleagues and advisors. I wanted to make sure they knew what had happened, especially if I decided to go public with the sabotage. I was already imagining the chaos that would ensue. Lauren's reputation would be destroyed, and I'd finally be free from her manipulations. It was a strange feeling, wanting revenge but knowing I had to keep it contained, at least for now. Meanwhile, Lauren called me a few times, cursing me out, calling me insecure, trying to spin her lies. I didn't answer. Honestly, I didn't want to hear her bullshit anymore. I could see her true colors now: bitchy, selfish, manipulative. I didn't feel bad about leaving her in the dust. If she thought she could cheat and lie her way out of this, she was mistaken. I spent the rest of the day preparing everything, sending my report, activating the lab monitoring, and making sure I had a backup plan. I was ready for whatever came next. Honestly, I felt a mix of adrenaline and exhaustion. Part of me wanted to just cut all ties, throw her out, and forget I ever knew her. But another part, deep down, knew I needed to be smarter than her, to play this game carefully, and to protect what I'd worked so hard for. This wasn't just about her cheating on me. It was about defending my life's work from her bullshit. Now, I keep watching, waiting for her next move. I know she'll try to spin this, deny everything, maybe even come back pretending to be remorseful. But I've learned one thing: never trust a bitchy wife who lies, cheats, and sabotages everything in her path. I'm not letting her win. Not now, not ever. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became that Lauren's game was far from over. She always was the type to double down when cornered. After she stormed out that night, I knew I had to stay ahead of her fast. The lab monitoring system I'd installed was just the beginning. I needed to get inside her mind, figure out what she was planning next, and make sure I had all the evidence I needed in case she tried to deny or spin her way back into my life. I started by planting subtle cues that I was watching her without making it obvious. Every time she called, I made sure I didn't answer right away, just enough to make her think I was busy. I also kept track of her digital footprint, her social media activity, her messages, even her location data. She was out every day, apparently meeting friends, but I noticed her phone's GPS kept pinging near some sketchy spots, places I didn't recognize. She was covering her tracks well, but I was catching up. One thing that really angered me was how she kept up her bitchy attitude, even when I called her out. She'd dismiss me, call me insecure, call me paranoid, like I was the crazy one. Her words stung, but I also saw her desperation behind the bitchiness. She was panicked, trying to keep control of the situation, but her facade was cracking. Every lie she told, every excuse, just made her look worse. I could tell she was trying to spin her story, but her guilt was bleeding through. I managed to get some of her emails and texts from a backup account she hadn't realized I knew about. They were full of her trash talk about me, calling me boring, pathetic, and a nerd with no life. She'd even bragged to her friends about how she was done with losers and had better options. She thought she was so clever, but she was just revealing her true colors. That's when I realized this wasn't just about cheating. It was about her ego, her need to feel superior, to feel alive by screwing around behind my back. Meanwhile, I kept working on my project, making sure the calibration system was secure. I knew Lauren had been messing with the neural maps, trying to manipulate my experiments. I could see her trying to interfere during some of the sessions, but now I had safeguards in place. I even created a false calibration session, one that looked real but was actually a trap. If she tried to tamper with it, I'd know immediately and I could catch her red-handed. The emotional toll was intense. I'd go from feeling angry, then sad, then angry again. Sometimes I'd wonder how I missed all the signs, how I was so blind to the bitchy side of her, the lies, the manipulations. I'd always thought I was a good judge of character, but Lauren had blindsided me. I felt betrayed not just as her husband but as a scientist who poured his soul into his work. The thought that she was sabotaging my research just to get a thrill, it made me sick. One night, I caught her sneaking into my lab again. I'd left the door slightly ajar, just enough to see her silhouette. She was fiddling with my neural interface, trying to access the calibration files. I hit record on my hidden device, and as soon as she looked like she was about to delete something, I stormed in. Her eyes widened and she started to lie again, but I cut her off. "You're done," I told her coldly. "I've got everything, every lie, every sneaky move. You think you can play me, but I'm not stupid anymore. You've been screwing with my work, lying to my face, cheating on me, and trying to cover it all up. I don't want anything to do with you anymore." She looked furious, like she'd just been caught in her last cover-up attempt. She tried to deny everything, but I showed her the evidence on my phone and the recordings I'd made. Her face was a mask of rage and embarrassment, but I saw panic too. She knew she was cornered. That night I made the final decision. I was done. I told her she had to leave and that I was going to report everything: her sabotage, her affair, her manipulations. I wasn't going to let her ruin my project or threaten my sanity anymore. I was finally taking control. As she packed her things, she kept screaming at me, calling me insecure, a paranoid nerd, and a loser who couldn't keep his wife happy. But honestly, I felt a strange sense of relief. I'd finally seen her true face and I was ready to move on. I knew it wouldn't be easy. I'd have to rebuild trust in my work and myself. But I also knew I was stronger than her sneaky manipulations. I'd been betrayed on every level, but at least now I had the facts, and I was going to make sure her lies didn't destroy everything I'd worked for. After she left that night, I felt a weird mix of relief and exhaustion. I sat alone in the dark, staring at the monitor screens I'd set up around the lab, reviewing every bit of evidence I'd collected. It was a brutal realization. Lauren had been lying, cheating, sabotaging my work, all while acting like the victim. And I had been blind to it for so long. Now it was all laid out in front of me, clear as day. I knew I had to be careful moving forward. Lauren was cunning, and I didn't trust her to just walk away quietly. That's why I installed the monitoring systems in the lab: hidden cameras, neural activity logs, access trackers. I was determined to catch any future interference and protect my project at all costs. It wasn't just about her betrayal anymore. It was about safeguarding the years of work I'd poured into this research. If she managed to sabotage the calibration again, it could jeopardize everything. The emotional toll hit me hard. I'd invested so much of myself into this project, into building a future that I thought Lauren was part of. Her betrayal felt like a punch to the gut, but at the same time, a wake-up call. I realized I'd been too trusting, too naive. She'd always been bitchy, yes, but I never thought she'd go this far. Now I saw her for what she truly was: selfish, manipulative, and reckless. I felt angry, but also strangely empowered. I was finally taking control of the situation. I spent the next few days tightening security, making backup plans, and preparing a detailed report for my colleagues. I wanted everyone to know what had happened: how Lauren had been sabotaging my research, flirting with Ryan, and lying her ass off. I didn't plan to confront her again. I knew that would only give her a chance to spin her lies. No, this was about protecting myself, my work, and my sanity. I was done being a victim. Meanwhile, Lauren called repeatedly, leaving nasty messages and accusing me of being paranoid. I didn't answer. Honestly, I didn't care anymore. Her words didn't matter. I knew she'd try to come back, probably pretending to be remorseful, but I wasn't falling for that. I'd seen her true face now. She'd lied so many times, I couldn't trust her even if she begged me. I also started to think about what I'm going to do next. Do I try to fix the marriage? No, not after this. Do I just cut her out completely? Yeah, that seems like the best course of action. I need to focus on my work and rebuild my life without her chaos. I've decided I'll give her a formal notice, tell her she's cut off, that she's no longer welcome in my life or my lab. I'll pack up all her belongings and send them to her and make it clear that I'm moving on. Honestly, I feel exhausted but also strangely relieved. It's like I've been holding my breath for months, and now I can finally breathe again. I learned a lot from this mess: about trust, about betrayal, and about the importance of protecting what matters most. I know now that I can't blindly trust anyone, not even someone I've loved. People are complicated, and some are just so selfish they'll do anything to get what they want, even if it destroys everything. So yeah, it's going to be a rough road ahead. There'll be a lot of rebuilding, a lot of healing, but I'm determined not to let her ruin me or my work. I'll keep pushing forward, focused, cautious, and smarter than ever. And honestly, I hope anyone reading this who's been betrayed like I was learns from my story. Trust is earned, and sometimes you gotta cut your losses and walk away. Because when someone screws with your mind, your heart, and your future, the best revenge is to pick yourself up and keep going, better, stronger, and wiser than before. In the days that followed, I threw myself into rebuilding my work and my life. I finalized the security measures I'd put in place and made sure every piece of evidence was documented and stored securely. I cleaned out her belongings, packed them up, and sent them off with a message that made it clear I was done pretending she was still part of my world. The house. It felt emptier without her bitchy remarks and constant lies. But honestly, that emptiness gave me space to think clearly for the first time in years. The emotional fallout was rough. I went through every stage: anger, sadness, guilt, and finally acceptance. I kept asking myself if I should have seen it coming, if I was stupid for trusting her even a little. But then I realized something crucial. The betrayal wasn't just about her cheating or sabotaging my work. It was about me learning to trust my instincts and to stand up for myself. I'd always been the kind of guy who believed in loyalty, honesty, and doing the right thing. Lauren shattered all that, but now I knew better. I'd never let anyone manipulate me again. I've learned to be more cautious, more guarded, not paranoid, just aware. I've also come to see that sometimes walking away is the strongest move you can make. Staying might have meant more pain, more lies, and more damage, but leaving behind someone who only drags you down is a form of self-respect. I've decided to focus on my research, my career, and rebuilding my confidence. I've even started therapy, something I never thought I'd do, but it's helping me process everything and move forward without bitterness or regret. Looking back, I see this experience as a brutal lesson, but also a turning point. I've become more resilient, more aware of how fragile trust can be and how important it is to protect what matters. Lauren's betrayal exposed her true self: selfish, manipulative, and entirely lacking in remorse. I realize now that I didn't lose anything worth having by ending it. Instead, I gained clarity, strength, and a renewed sense of purpose. To anyone out there who might be going through something similar, I'll say this: trust your gut. When the signs start adding up, lies, evasiveness, sudden changes, don't ignore them. Confront the issue head on, gather evidence, and don't be afraid to walk away if it's the right thing. Some people will betray you no matter how much you love them or how loyal you are. And that's okay. Because the ultimate act of self-love is recognizing your worth and not allowing anyone to diminish it. In the end, I feel lighter, freer. I know I'll rebuild, I'll heal, and I'll eventually find happiness again, without someone who only brings chaos into my life. The betrayal hurt like hell, but it also set me free. And that, I think, is the biggest lesson I'll carry forward. Trust is earned, loyalty is a choice, and sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do.